just begin by like introducing ourselves. So like I'm Gabe, I'm the host, I guess. Yeah, I go to Wisconsin and yeah, go.
I'm Lauren. I am a participant in the Zoom, and I go to Syracuse in Syracuse, New York.
And you're a singer.
Um,
Sorry.
And I'm a singer and songwriter.
Yeah,
And I
Cleo, you
play
don't get to
guitar.
sorry. I'm Cleo. I am also a participant in the Zoom panelist, dare I say?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm a painter, very into the arts, and I go to Yale in New Haven, Connecticut.
Define what we're talking about, which is like gatekeeping. In terms of just like, I mean, how would you guys define it?
I feel like gatekeeping to me is kind of the is like sort of an unwarranted limiting of access to information, just for personal reasons and ones that gatekeeping seems to like I feel like it defines something that's not necessary to keep away from others
Yeah.
versus like withholding information or something else.
Yeah. Like keeping something away from someone based on like sort of something that should be irrelevant, like
Yeah.
your gender or like other parts of your identity.
It's much more arbitrary.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. I agree. Yeah, I think it's like not wanting the masses to be aware of something because then it makes it less cool, essentially, to know that thing. So on that though, so all right, so let's say like you meet someone. eh, What is your first impression of somebody if their favorite band is like Panic at the Disco or like Justin Bieber? Or, like,
Um I think it's like fun and it adds diversity and like it's the other side of the spectrum to where like people are too pretentious about their music and like listen to someone who has like 1,000 monthly listeners and they're like, oh, I'm so hip.
I think it depends on who the person is. If you're interested in other things, you're not going to devote as much time to, I don't know, really diving into a bunch of different musical genres. So it makes sense to like more popular stuff. But I think it also, I don't know, in the contemporary world, music is much more accessible now. And so with that being said, I don't know. I think I would sort of feel like either this person doesn't really care to know more or they're just not, yeah, like what I just said, they're just not very interested.
Yeah. Why do you think we care so much about our taste being unique? Because I think, like you're right, like someone's taste doesn't have to be, but I'd imagine that something that you both like about yourselves and are proud of is the fact that the things that you like you don't find everywhere. You know what I mean? So like why do we care about that?
I think in both of our fields, like in what we want to do, like you have to stand out to be different and to succeed. Like you can't if you make something that looks like another painter, another musician, or like it sounds the same or looks the same, like it won't work, you know? And like people might appreciate it and be like, "Wow, that's really good," but it's not like like I don't know, special
Sticky?
to you, and it's not what makes you stand out. Yeah, so it has.
Definitely agree with that, relate to that too. I think also having a unique taste is indicative of time and energy and passion put into whatever it is that you're interested in. I feel like particularly within our generation, the members of it, we are searching for modes and methods of belonging, especially given how universal and how globalized everything is now because of the internet. And so any sort of self-identifier that we can find and keep in our holster is almost holy in a way and just really important. And I think that I feel myself refusing to let those things go, as I'm sure many others do.
That I agree with you, Cleo, when you talked about how it's like how you like it, because you spoke about this identity that you felt like you had with that your taste provides it, the way that you dress, and it feels as if the algorithm finds you niche things to like that other people also like, you know, so it
Mhm.
finds you this like niche community where you're like, hey, like you're
Yeah.
like me. And so it's just the question is um how does that affect gatekeeping? Like the I found like there's this artist with like 10,000, you know, or 1,000 listeners, whatever, right?
Mhm.
And you're just like, well, hold on, I don't want that to get out. I don't want it to get big, because I guess what I was talking about in terms of this idea of we feel like we need to be unique. It's like in our with our humor, right? For example, like a lot of our humor is ironic humor. Agreed. And so it's almost as if
Yeah.
you must be in the know to understand why something is ironic, right? And the moment that everybody on the planet knows about it, it's no longer ironic, right? And so it's like there's something about being in the know. And then you also get through these cycles where it's like, let's just say like doing X is funny. And then everybody does X, so it's not funny anymore. So you're no longer in the know.
Right.
And then you do it ironically. And now it's like, oh, now it's funny because you need that awareness to do it. Because now it's like it's funny because like you don't care. And then it's like and then you go through that cycle again. You know, it's
Right.
like, now you can't do it again because everyone's doing it again. And you can do it like one more time and then it ends. And I think like how does that affect it, like being in the know? Like what's the connection? You see what I'm trying to get at? Because it's like there's something about being in the know with humor. There's something about being in the know
Yeah.
in terms of this musical community or this niche artist.
Mm-hmm.
And then the moment that in the same way that the moment that doing X becomes basic and global, once this community becomes like this giant movement, or it's like this artist with 10,000 listeners ever becomes this big thing, knowing them is no longer cool. It's no longer in the know. So
Mhm.
how does the algorithm
Yeah.
kind of make gatekeeping more of a thing? Because like, and I know I'm just like going off because I'm just gonna throw a bunch of ideas out there, and I'm sure
Yeah, sure.
I have a feeling both of you are like jumping at the Cleo's like ready to um because like radio listeners, right? Like we don't listen to the radio anymore. Like that's like it's a thing, it's a source. The the amount of people who listen to the radio has changed drastically, like since our parents were growing up. And so like and they didn't really go through a whole gatekeeping thing. So
Mhm.
how does the world that we live in with our Spotify profiles and our Instagrams and our TikToks kind of make us gatekeep these communities that we find and these things that we like, where it's like, hey, well, I know that I'm in the know, you know? So I'm just gonna.
Right. Um, I think my desire to gatekeep comes from a desire to not have feeling like artists become less innovative and less artistic when they suddenly have to deal with the fact that they need to please a very, very large audience instead of a much smaller one. Um, for example, I don't know. This is like a complicated example, but I love FK Twigs. She's one of my favorite musicians. Um, and she recently came out with a new album that is like really happy and really dancey and is super awesome, but in kind of complete contrast to her previous music, which was very, very emotional and really sad and really raw. And I don't think that an artist has to sell themselves, give their whole personal life details into the work they make, because I also don't think that's a healthy relationship with creating. But there's something about that feels more genuine in comparison to music that's really dancey and fun and happy, but in a lot of ways picks up on the same pop rhythms and I don't know, pop styles that are usually very commercially successful. And so I think there's this feeling of like, well, that also correlated with her becoming more famous. And so it makes me wonder as the audience if that had to do with her just wanting to shift the music she was making, or if it was more strategic in pleasing a public image. And she's admitted to the first one and not the second. And so that's cool. She's just making that music because she feels happier, and that's beautiful, a wonderful story. But there are similar stories with other musicians that, or just other artists in general, that I think would maybe say the first part of that and say that it was intentional, but there is a more strategic business side behind.
Depends on the consumer, and like if you want to, I don't know, I think in my program people are always sharing music and sharing new artists, but obviously some people want to keep that for themselves. But there's a few people in my program who are reminding us that they saw Billie Eilish at a 200-person cap club in New York City before she blew up. So I think they want to hold on to that.
Right.
Now Billie Eilish is playing like stadium or arenas, so they're like, I saw her when, you know. I think it just depends on the consumer, and I think there's a decent balance amongst people, at least that I'm around. But yeah, like definitely when there's always also that person who will play you a song and then you listen to it and they're like, I showed you that. Like, you know what I mean? Like they take pride in that,
Yeah.
and they definitely have that energy. But I don't think there's like a one size fits all for this topic.
Dadaism kind of connects to this because I feel like it does in a very interesting way because of this anti-movement movement. And the moment it becomes an anti-movement, like if it's an anti-movement, right?
Mhm.
It becomes a movement, it loses its definition of being an anti-movement. So the moment
Right.
and I feel like that connects nicely to this idea of not wanting things to blow up because then it loses its what was genuine about it, like you said with like FK Twigs. So, you know what I mean? And so I think if you could just give a background on like what that is specifically, because like I don't want to pretend like I know a lot about
What
it.
Dadaism is?
Yeah, and how do you think it connects? Because I feel like, I mean, I don't know, maybe you're just like it doesn't, and then that's cool. But I feel like it does. You disagree? Like, do you think it connects?
I think, yeah, I might have to simmer on that a little longer. But as far as Dadaism is concerned, it was an art movement in the early 20th century that
Cleo.
like number one Dada artist was Marcel Duchamp. Famously painted a mustache on the Mona Lisa, famously exhibited a urinal and called it a fountain. Just really like subverting your expectations of everyday objects, of what art was, what the canon of art was, what art history was. It was a critique, I think, is maybe the best way to characterize the movement. But I don't think Duchamp's intention was to become a super famous artist and to do all of these things. But I think the fact that it did become a movement is kind of part of the point. But it's also complicated because the Dadaists would never admit that that's what they wanted. But I feel like it's a little bit undeniably what they wanted.
Yeah,
so yeah.
it's interesting because I guess like that one of the other founders of it was like Tristan Tzara, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he says that art loses its value if somebody else understands your intention. And so I think like it's interesting because it's like so that like it kind of highlights his idea of why you make stuff and this rebellion against the masses and society like and being a part of what everyone's just doing and kind of being mindless and like or doing things just mindlessly because society does it. And I feel like there's the connection there is when you like stuff just because it's popular. And this wanting to hold on to like, no, I like it. And like if somebody else, the more other people like it, the less valuable it becomes that you like it. So I just thought there was like an interesting connection there because it feels as if our parents' generation didn't gatekeep. Because
No.
am I wrong? Am I dead wrong?
I mean, just think about like
Well,
80s
okay.
punk rock. I don't know.
I don't know.
That's a good point.
It
Because that whole scene was like the underground, like you're cool if you're cool and you're cool if you know about it situation. That's a really good example, I think.
Okay. Well, I didn't. The point I was trying to make was it feels as if it's maybe more prevalent now, maybe fair. Yet it doesn't feel like it's a thing with just our generation. It feels more a part of human nature, which then would make sense.
Yeah. If I was a betting man, I would assume that the rate of gatekeeping is somewhat constant.
Wow. Okay. And Lauren, in a summary, in a sentence, 2 sentences, gatekeeping. Why
If
do
I were a betting man, I don't know. I mean, obviously we weren't alive at that time, but I think that everything is just sort of heightened with the internet and Gen Z and the way we grew up, that I think everything may seem a lot more intense with when it comes to gatekeeping about, but it's also just I think because we know a lot more because of the internet and how interconnected everything is. But I don't know. What a great answer. But no, I think it's a tough question, but I think it's definitely been around, but we probably just see more of it now.
I mean, but also just like historically, I mean, social class is like the original gatekeeper. And we can get into all of the specificities of that, but that's not.
Yeah.
Like there were literally social rules that said that you could not do certain things if you were not a member of a specific in-group.
That I mean, you're spot on, I guess. It feels like, to me, it's about this desire that we have to be in the know, and when everybody knows, it's no longer special. Being special.